I call Brett Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, that's just quite incredible to hear that from the previous speaker. A man who aspires to be a party leader but doesn't even know the economic growth rate of the last quarter or year criticises a speaker's arguments on this side of the House. That is rich indeed. Although it's not surprising because that member has been fixated on rich for all the months of this 51st Parliament. Sir, I rise in opposition to this bill, this member's bill. It is ill-defined and poorly targeted. In fact, it isn't targeted at all. It is a one-size-fits-all approach. And as we know on this side, one size does not. It is also, sir, a solution by decree. It has no specifications. It has no fundamental standard details. It merely says, we'll make a couple of changes and the job's done. Some would say, Mr. Speaker, that is the typical approach of the Labour Party. In fact, some might describe it as their policy methodology. But what does it do? It does seek to set a single standard across all rentals. It takes into no consideration at all the challenges from different builds, different types, different previous standards. It merely says that everyone can comply with this one set standard. It doesn't understand, takes no cognizance at all of some of the challenges, Mr. Speaker, as we have heard from a previous speaker on this side of the House. Some of the challenges, Mr. Speaker, are simply insurmountable given current installation. Others are challenging but could be addressed. However, they could only be addressed at major cost. And what we understand on this side of the House, but clearly is not understood on the other side or on the crossbenches, is that an increase in cost to the landlord is going to be borne by the tenant, if not in the short term, certainly in the long run. So what we have is a bill that is going to propose what amounts to an increase in cost to tenants and somehow thinks it's going to solve an affordability problem and a housing problem. It simply will not, sir. So let us look at the standards. Let's have a look at the standards that are specified in the bill. Well, the answer are there enough, really. We simply don't know if the standards that will come into force will be so high that they will compromise supply of rental stock because landlords can't afford to do it, or whether they would have simply compromised the cost that tenants have to pay. Of course, the other possibility, Mr. Speaker, is that the standards will shoot too low, in which case they won't improve the warmth or dryness of the rental stock either. And at the moment, sir, in the bill that is being introduced, we simply don't know. Now there is the rub, Mr. Speaker, the heart of the problems that this bill will create or exacerbate. It will simply force properties out of supply.
Nonsense. Utter nonsense.
Or it will force significant costs on landlord, which the reality of this market environment, which the member's officer has spoken about, will simply force greater costs onto tenants. And it proposes a measurement that would make the person legally responsible for something they cannot control, Mr. Speaker. It's the internal temperature and ventilation. It is something that is drivel and it's highly dependent on the tenant behaviour. And yet they would seek to make the landlord responsible. That is incredible, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely incredible. Now what this National Party is doing, sir, we're very clear that housing affordability is driven by supply challenges, and we're addressing those through strong, pragmatic means to open up land supply, to reduce regulatory costs, to reduce materials costs, tackling problems head on. And we're taking on the real problems for vulnerable renters, sir, by addressing installation in state houses, something we've already done. Grabbed the bull by the horns and actually solved that particular problem. The next step in that plan, Mr. Speaker, is developing a practical minimum quality standard and applying that to our state housing stock. The stock, as I've said, Mr. Speaker, which is where the most vulnerable low-income earners are likely to reside. So we tackle the problem pragmatically using measures that will work and have been proven to work. The opposition, sir, are simply proposing a decree, a one-size-fits-all that won't. I cannot support that and I will not. Thank you.
Mr.